everybody. Let's get going. Again, thank you for joining us. Today's topic is going to be for better, for worse, when your spouse needs care. There's a lot of issues that go swirling around when there is a decline in health, and we're going to do what we can to address them during our time this afternoon. Um, we have a good turnout, which is nice. So welcome to those new folks that are joining us. Our numbers, people attending our webinars and downloading our webinars from our website, the numbers have been going up. So that's always nice to get more information out there so that we can help more people. Um, just like always, let's make sure you can hear me and see my screen. So all three things: hear me, and see my screen. If you could just put it in the Q&A box or the chat box, let me know we're all good. All right. Yes, great. Thank you very much. All right, cool. So um, I've been doing elder care work for it's been over 23 years, and there's always something that gets me when we're working with a dad or a mom, and the other spouse needs the care, needs the help. They've spent decades together at times, and they've been through thick and they've been through thin. You go back to the wedding vows, and for better or for worse, sometimes those care conditions can be very difficult, those health conditions, the deterioration. Um, so we wanted to address those from a spouse perspective. They're going to be common and similar to those from a child or a sibling perspective as well, but just to really pay our respects to those that are doing it from a spousal perspective, because it's close to my heart, and it's real important that we get it done right for that couple when they're going through these trying times. So as we get into it, if you have questions, please feel free to put them into the Q&A box or the chat box. I will be answering them later at the end of our program. And if you ever want to see one of our previous webinars, please go to tullyelderlaw.com, our website, tullyelderlaw.com. Under the video section, you'll see all the webinars we've been doing over the last year. It's something we started when the pandemic started, and we've been continuing it. In fact, we're now doing 4 a month, every Wednesday. Is generally what it's going to be. Get on our email list if you're not. You can shoot me an email, or you can shoot our marketing director, Anne, A-N-N-E, at tullyelderlaw.com, an email, and we'll be sure to get you on the list. Okay. So the idea of long-term care, the idea of healthcare issues as we're getting older and between spouses, one of the best ways that we can explain graphically and visually what's going on and what the future may look like is what we call the elder care continuum. And there's different rows to it. So it kind of reads left to right. And if you're looking at the top left, there's no cognitive or functional abilities, right? The gentleman there is fine. But there's typically a progression. And to the right, now we have a little bit of limited function. We demonstrate that with a cane, but it could also be cognitive decline. Another step to the right, we have more limited function, evidenced by the rollator there, the walker. A little bit more, we get to the wheelchair, or forgive me, the scooter. And then finally, when there's significant limited function, either physically or cognitively, we're heading towards the end of the continuum. Now, what you'll find is that this continuum can happen in weeks, or this continuum can happen in years. It's not written as to what it's meant to be. Every person is different. It can happen very fast, or it can happen again in a chronic fashion over years and years. Now, underneath that, the second row is the residential options. Are you living at home? Are you at home with a little bit of assistance? Are you at home with more assistance? Have you perhaps moved to an assisted living facility, or ultimately have you moved to a nursing home? And again, going left to right, that generally corresponds with the level above. So as the care deteriorates, or as the health deteriorates, the care need increases. And where we see real difficulties and unfortunate crises is when we could be about 4 steps down on the care side and have even more limited function, yet you're still home and alone by yourself, or you just have your children stopping by, or you just have your spouse there. Whenever there's a greater need for care, but you don't have the matching level of care, it's somewhat of a danger zone, and greater problems can occur. So it's nice to use this continuum to demonstrate that. And of course, you can't talk about care without talking about the financial component. So along the bottom, you'll see if everybody's healthy and well without care, there's no costs, but it gradually progresses based on the not just the amount of care, but the level of care that's needed. As the health declines, then more care is needed, so therefore more of a financial cost. Okay, so hopefully that's a good overview. We're going to get into it in a different way shortly. So I always like to give a bigger picture to kind of frame what we're talking about here. And as we get older, and if you've been to these webinars before, you may have seen this slide before, but it's good to recapture it. As we get older, we can have different things happen. We can have different medical issues. We can have different health issues. And those issues, those health issues, can be broken into two categories. Those that are medical in nature, okay, and those that are long-term care in nature. The difference is this: a medical need is one that's addressed by doctors or hospitals or the emergency room or rehabilitation centers. Those are medical in nature, and those are typically covered by your health insurance or Medicare, and your Part A, your Part B, your supplemental plan, or if you've opted out of that, for an Advantage plan. A little tidbit is Advantage plans are generally pretty helpful when everybody's healthy and good, but they need to be reviewed as care issues arise. Okay, traditional Medicare A and B and a supplemental plan may be the better way to go as health issues start to converge. Okay, so again, medical issues covered by Medicare. Other side of the coin, we can have issues that are not going to be medical at all. They're what's called functional needs, or the activities of daily living. It's what are considered to be custodial or chronic in nature. Okay, those are not medical. Therefore, Medicare is not paying. Your health insurance is not paying for those long-term care needs. So what exactly is long-term care? Well, it's the services and supports to meet a person's personal care needs, best really defined by the activities of daily living. And an activity of daily living, or an ADL, is literally everything that we do in the morning. Okay. For example, let me go through the list and I'll give you my example. So walking is an activity of daily living. Bathing, eating, toileting, dressing, there's your eating, and transferring. So transferring means getting up and out of bed or getting up and out of a chair. So these are the ADLs, the activities of daily living. Getting out of bed in the morning, right? You all did that. That's transferring. Walking to the bathroom, using the bathroom, bathing, toileting, then getting dressed, grooming, and eating. That's things we do. Those are things we do every day, every morning. And if we need assistance with those functional needs, again, those are the ADLs. That is long-term care. I don't want to discount those that do not have functional needs, but rather have cognitive decline. There is, of course, a great need and a great need for care when you have just a cognitive decline or a combination of the physical and the cognitive. Typically, long-term care has focused on, at least the Medicaid program has focused on the physical, but the addressing the cognitive side has grown greatly over the last number of years. And Medicaid has certain changes coming down the road where they'll actually allow for approval of Medicaid benefits in the home with a cognitive diagnosis. All brand new, all coming out January at this point. If you wish to know more about the new community-based Medicaid laws, which I'll touch upon a little bit in a little while, again, I've got several webinars on our website that talk more in depth about the changes that are occurring with home care. Often people will say is, preparing food, paying your bills, driving. Those are not activities of daily living. Those are what are called incidental activities of daily living. You may see those decline first, forgetting to pay bills, medication bottles piling up, not writing checks correctly, getting lost while they're driving. Those incidental activities are the ones that lead up to greater loss with these actual ADLs, okay? Physically, you may see your spouse, what we call, furniture surfing. They're grabbing on from chair to table to chair to walk. that is obviously a need on an ADL of walking and or perhaps balance. So there's concerns there that are, we see signs and we see examples of when our loved ones start to need this type of care. Okay, so where do we receive long-term care? First and foremost, in your home. One of our objectives is to help keep our clients at home. Nursing homes are wonderful and needed in many circumstances, but clients tell us to our face, we want to stay home. Spouses tell us to in our meetings, children tell us in our meetings, we want to keep mom home. I want to keep my wife home. And we'll do what we can to make that happen. All right. So receiving long-term care at home is certainly a first and foremost scenario. Then assisted living facilities. Okay. Again, a very good option for many, many people. Not for everybody, just like a nursing home isn't for everybody, and just like a home isn't for everybody. But an assisted living facility is a good communal and social environment with different levels of care as needed. Ultimately, you then have, oh, excuse me, did I do something there? Okay. Then you have, that's what I clicked off assisted living. That's what I did. Sorry. Then you have a skilled nursing facility. That's a nursing home. All right. SNF or SNF, they call it sometimes. That's the nursing home itself. Again, definitely serves a purpose. You're going to have 24-hour care available, but you have to have more serious care needs. Okay. And ultimately, there's also something called a continuing care facility. A CCRC is sometimes what it's called. There are several on Long Island. And their goal is to have families and couples and individuals move in. They pay a significant lump sum up front, as well as monthly rent, room and board, et cetera. But once you're in that system and on that campus, the goal is to go from independent living to assisted living to rehabilitation if necessary, as well as nursing home, without ever applying for Medicaid. Okay. And it's all in one building or one campus. So it definitely is a great idea. We've had clients go through that continuum or their continuum, and it can be explored, but it's often, like I shared, costly. Okay. Next point is, I always like to start each of our meetings with really what's on our clients' minds. What are they concerned about? Why are they here? Why are they talking to us? And it often falls into these categories, okay? Usually, almost always falls into these categories. How do we protect our home? When a spouse needs care, this may not be the first thought, but it is a thought. I've got several here of how do we protect what we've lived in or what we've paid off or we've built over the last 30, 40, 50, 60 years, okay? So how do we protect our home? How do we protect our financial accounts, all right? Are we gonna lose it all? Does Medicaid take it? How much does this stuff cost? Also, how do we pay for the care? How do we actually pay for an aide to come in? Is it thousands and thousands of dollars a week? A nursing home can be over $15,000 up to $20,000 a month. So how are they actually gonna pay for the care that's needed? It's just starting now. How are we gonna cover years and years of this expense? All right. And ultimately, it's about how do we help my loved one? How do we help my spouse get the best care possible? Now, I put that one last. For most, and for me, that's first. How do I help my loved one get the best care possible while getting the care paid for and while protecting the assets? Okay. Now, if we don't protect the assets or we don't figure out a way to pay for the care, or if we don't get our loved one the best care possible, there will be consequences. Unfortunately, it's just how things are. When clients come into us and engage us, it's at different parts of that continuum. We can have clients that are just starting, or we can have clients that are actually in a crisis where care is needed in that house yesterday and there's no funds to pay for it. What do? It happens weekly, okay? So we've seen these consequences firsthand. If we don't protect the home, New York State Medicaid, the Medicaid program, can put a lien on the property. They can pursue what's called estate recovery. That's where if a person was on Medicaid while owning the home, that is allowed, never recommended, but it is allowed, and then they pass on, or if they move out to a nursing home, let's leave it at the pass on. If they pass on while on Medicaid in that home, Medicaid can recover against their estate. All right. So there's Medicaid doesn't go away. If you still own assets when you pass on, they're coming to get them. Or you have to pursue a fire sale, put it on the market at the lowest price possible just to sell it fast so you have cash. That's the consequence of not planning in advance, of not protecting in advance. We've seen it happen. The consequence of not protecting the financial accounts is you're going to spend it on the care, and for some, that's fine. I always tell the story of a gentleman that I met. At this point, it's probably 15, 18 years ago. He didn't want Medicaid, and that's fine. His wife needed a nursing home. He had millions of dollars. He was able to pay for the care, and he did within the nursing home. But most clients, most of us, most of our family members aren't several million dollars, don't have several million dollars in the account. So protecting the financial account so you don't spend it all on the care is a very worthy goal, and we want to avoid this consequence. Sometimes clients will say to me, well, don't we have to spend it and then get Medicaid? You don't. There are protection strategies for home care and for nursing home care so that you can get Medicaid in there quicker. Why? It's not all about saving the money for children. It's not about inheritances. If we have a husband and a wife, or we have spouses, what you're looking at is making sure there's money left and available for the surviving spouse. At some point, one spouse is going to pass. And if we spend all the money on that spouse's care, what then is the surviving spouse going to live off of? So we have that objective and that concern. And then ultimately, you can ask any of our clients, do you want to spend all your money, or do you want to leave some for the children or the grandkids? 99.9% of the time, they're going to want to leave something for the children or the grandchildren. So that's a secondary or tertiary objective, but it's out there, okay? Now, paying for the care. If you don't deal with paying for the care, you're going to be spending upwards of $10,000, $11,000, $12,000 a month for home care. Now, remember that continuum. It doesn't start at $10,000, $11,000 a month. It starts at informal care. You have family helping, you have the spouse helping, you have children helping informally. Then maybe the neighbor's checking, and then maybe somebody from church or the community is checking. Or then you ultimately hire somebody from the neighborhood. But ultimately, it's going to continue the costs are going to continue to spiral and become too much. And if you keep paying these numbers, and God forbid you're in a nursing home, $15,000 to $20,000 a month, then you're going to spend it all on the care, or at least a good percentage of it. And there's not going to be any money left for the surviving spouse or any other needs that are out there. Okay. So we got to get the care paid for. If we don't help, if we don't help you help your loved one get the best care possible, there can also be a result or a consequence, which is frailty. There can be decline, a greater decline, an increased decline, and ultimately a crisis. One of our objectives as well is to avoid a crisis. We can have a care crisis, or we can have a financial crisis. And one thing I've learned through these years, and I think you'll agree with me, is whenever you have a crisis, there's going to be more stress, right? That's true. There's going to be less options, and it's going to be more expensive. So whether it's a care crisis or a financial crisis, there's going to be less options, there's going to be more stress, there's going to be more cost. The goal is to plan and protect your assets in advance. One of the reasons I do these webinars is to encourage folks and more folks to get the work done before the crisis appears. Nobody has a crystal ball. We don't know when that crisis is going to occur. So if I'm talking to you right now, and you haven't done your planning and your protection, give us a call, please, and we'll be able to set up the right plan so that you can minimize the opportunities or chances of a crisis later, okay? Now, how do we deal with paying for long-term care? So we've been talking about how expensive it is and what the risks and the consequences are. But there's usually a time when you're using your cash, you're using your savings to pay for care. Typically, it's the informal care in the beginning. For those that are in a crisis, they're paying for the care with a home care agency, $25, $30 an hour, $300 to $400 a day, $10,000, $11,000 a month, okay? Using their own cash. We want to avoid that, all right? And we can, as long as we plan and protect in advance. Another way to pay for the care is what's called long-term care insurance. Not many people have long-term care insurance. I've sat with many spouses where the wife would have the long-term care insurance because she qualified health-wise, but the husband did not, or vice versa. That's my own parents. Mom could get it, but dad could not. Um, and it's very common in that regard. Okay, so if long-term care insurance exists, that's great. Doesn't mean you can forget about this stuff, because the vast majority of times a long-term care insurance policy exists, it's not sufficient to pay for all the care. If home care can be $300 to $400 a day, or a nursing home can be $500 to $700 a day, and you have a long-term care policy, you need to look at what the daily benefit is. A lot of the policies we see are sitting at $200-300 a day for nursing home. That doesn't work. That doesn't work. You're still going to need other ways to pay for that care, either your cash or the last option, which I'll get to in a moment, which is called Medicaid. So when you have a long-term care policy, you have to see what the benefit is. What's the daily benefit? Okay. As well as how long does the policy actually last? Okay. Now, excuse me. The third and final way to pay for long-term care is the Medicaid program itself. So Medicaid is the payer of long-term care for the middle class. The middle class is very wide. It can be folks with a house and 100 grand, or it could be people with 2 homes and $2 million. Obviously, they're at the higher end of the middle class in that regard, and perhaps even outside of it. But Medicaid is the payer for the middle class. When we talk about Medicaid, it is not the food stamp program. Some clients come in, they're like, I don't want Medicaid, I'm not touching it. It is not, it is means tested, meaning it's about your assets, it's about your income, but it is not the food stamp program. It is not typically the poverty program that people think about, okay? It is the long-term care Medicaid program. And it's a godsend for many, many families. There are 2 Medicaid programs. There's what's called community Medicaid, which is where you're going to have the home health care aide come in and help with those activities of daily living. Community Medicaid also includes what's called the assisted living program, or some people call it ALP. That is where an assisted living facility is contracted with New York State Medicaid, and they allow Medicaid to pay for the room and board, okay? There's not many of those facilities around, maybe 5 or 6 on Long Island. There are more that are trying to get that contract with the state so they can use Medicaid to pay for the room and board. And hopefully that will increase each and every year. But that's also community Medicaid. They'll pay for that if you're in that program. It also covers adult daycare services. There's social model, there's medical model, transportation. Community Medicaid is run by what's called a managed long-term care agency, MLTC. There's a tremendous host of benefits that come from an MLTC. It's managed care, so they throw a lot in there, and the families do benefit by it. Now, community Medicaid, for the record, has always been a pretty straightforward program as far as the rules for eligibility. Currently, under current law, we can actually protect assets in May. We can protect a house. We can protect $200,000 in May and be eligible for community-based Medicaid in June. That doesn't mean you have an aide in the house in a month. The application takes months and months. It's a bear of a process. But you have eligibility, and at least you can file within a month as of today, as of this year. What's changing is community-based Medicaid is going to have what's called a look-back period. It's going to be a 30-month look-back period, and it was supposed to start last October of 2020. They postponed it to 2021, January, then April, then July. They kept postponing it because of the pandemic. So ultimately, New York State said, we are going to change the community Medicaid program. We are going to create a look-back period, which means penalties and which means waiting periods. But it's not going to start until you have an application submitted after January 1st of 2022. So what that means in a nutshell, folks, is if there is a care need, and that's why you're listening to us, now is the time to finish your planning and protection and file for community Medicaid benefits as soon as possible, definitely before the end of the year. There's going to be a tremendous backlog as we get closer to the end of the year because a lot of people are going to be filing to get in before this deadline. So again, we're kind of in a window of opportunity here where you can still protect and still apply without a look back for home care, without penalties for home care, without a waiting period for home care. All right. So if that's you, please, again, give us a call and we can sit down or Zoom and talk about it. All right. Now, the other Medicaid program is what's called chronic care Medicaid. That's the nursing home program. Okay. That's where Medicaid, upon eligibility, will pay for your nursing home bill, the full freight. Okay. There is a 5-year look back. That's 60 months. So that is, and that's been around for decades. So what that means is if you've protected any of your assets during the look back period by using, for example, an irrevocable trust, then you will not be eligible for nursing home Medicaid until the penalty runs out. If nursing home Medicaid is required and you protected assets within the 5 years, there will be a penalty, but you can undo it if necessary, if the circumstances are appropriate. Again, we can help with that. It unfortunately happens a lot. There are, again, as I said, these transfer penalties where Medicaid won't pay for a period of time if you've done the protection during the look back. And again, that's what's going to be applying to community Medicaid soon. The bottom line is, do your planning, do your protection in advance before these issues arise. But as per the topic of today's webinar, if your spouse already needs care at this point, then we're kind of changing into or transitioning into crisis mode, and we're going to do all we can to actually protect the assets and get the Medicaid benefits, okay? Now, in a spousal situation, gratefully, we have what's called a spousal refusal. Now, a spousal refusal is the strategy, is the method where if it's a crisis and there is a look back period, so for example, nursing home, or if nursing home may be appropriate, then we're going to be looking at assets not going to a trust necessarily, but rather going to the spouse. And then the spouse can sign what's called a spousal refusal document. And it literally just says, I can't afford to pay. And the benefit of that is it would shelter the assets temporarily, for the time being, entirely during the application process, okay? All of that can be avoided if the planning and the protection is done in advance, okay? Now, Medicaid eligibility itself, all right, it's going to be about 3 things. It's about your assets, it's about your income, and it is about the health or the care needs that the applicant actually has, okay? It's quite the eligibility process. It is quite the application, and it is back and forth dueling with the Medicaid agency during the application process. Generally speaking, you're looking at a 4, 5, maybe 6-month window from start to finish. That includes the time frame to gain eligibility, to gather all the documentation, to complete the application, and then file the application. Once the application's filed, you're probably looking at a 60 to 90-day turnaround, but it's getting to that point. That's where it gets a little bit longer, okay? When we're dealing with a spouse that needs care, we have to make sure that they are eligible financially below it's a minimal amount, it's $15,900. And there are, again, strategies we can do to shelter assets above that while keeping control and keeping flexibility. On the income side, we have an income cap monthly of $904 a month, but we're able to shelter the amounts over that by utilizing what's called a pooled supplemental needs trust. And on the health side or the care side, there's going to be assessments. And we are very different than every other elder law firm out there. We focus tremendously on the care. I have geriatric social workers on staff, and they're what we call elder care coordinators. And their purpose is to become the coordinators of the care, the coordinators of the benefits, and to become the advocate for your spouse or for your loved one so that they get the best care possible, okay? So there are different assessments that New York State will require, and my advocates will be involved, all right? They're there advocating. They've done it dozens and dozens or hundreds of times at this point to help our clients get the best care possible, the most hours of care possible, okay? So that's Medicaid eligibility in a nutshell. Again, if you want more details about it, go to the website, tullyelderlaw.com, click under the video link and webinars. We've got real detailed webinars dealing with Medicaid eligibility and the way to protect assets, the way to protect income, and so forth. Okay. Now, as we are helping our clients deal with these aging issues, I like to structure things. I like things to be broken down so I can understand it and so that our clients can understand it. So in essence, as folks get older, there are three different domains or three different areas that we have to address. The first one is the legal aspect of aging. That could, and I'll explain what that means. Then the second aspect is the financial component. And the third aspect of aging is the care needs themselves. So whenever we're talking to clients, it's legal, financial, and care. Why? Because we have a goal to pursue for each of those. On the legal front, we're doing all we can to shelter the assets and to shelter the income, okay? That is the goal of our legal domain, if you will. On the financial side, very clear goal, we need to get Medicaid to pay for the care, okay? And on the care side, I'm sure you'll all agree with me, it's so that your spouse or your loved one gets the best care possible. So we work on all three of these fronts, and we're able to because we have our care coordinators on staff. We're able to deal with all three of those issues and help the family on all three of those issues. Now, different tools that we use on the legal front, we may be using an irrevocable trust. That's all about asset protection. We may be utilizing or will be utilizing a durable modified POA. That stands for power of attorney. Probably the most important document out there. It needs to be modified and built for elder care issues. And as a side note, New York State is changing the power of attorney law next month. I did a webinar on that a week or two ago. Again, it's on the website. The tools that we utilize on the financial front to get the Medicaid to pay is, again, the community program as well as the chronic care program, which is the nursing home program. All right, that's how we get the care paid for. Now, on the care side, how do we do that? How do we help your loved ones, your spouse, get the best care possible? It's what I mentioned earlier. It's our elder care coordinators. They work in tandem, all right? It's a team over here. Our attorneys, our paralegals, and our care coordinator advocates are helping the spouse, helping the children, helping the caregivers, and of course, the client in need down that whole elder care continuum, all right? We're there working on the legal, the financial, and the care side as a team, supporting the family through the whole process. And our care coordinators are really right in the mix with that, all right? Now, I'm going to reiterate the three goals. Protect the assets. If your spouse needs care, the goals are protect the assets, get Medicaid to pay the bill, and to help your spouse get the best care possible, okay? That's it right there in a nutshell, the entire webinar, those 3 points. How we do that, I cover that in other webinars, okay? Now, traditional elder law, all right? What you're gonna find is that they're focusing on, and I did this quite honestly in the beginning until I learned better, legal and financial. Every elder law firm out there is going to try to protect the assets. Every elder law firm out there is going to handle the financial component to get Medicaid to pay. That's great, okay? But you see the care side kind of just floating out there. When a loved one or a spouse needs care, there's going to be a coordination requirement, all right? Who are the providers? What are the benefits? How do we coordinate all that? So that'll be on the family. There's advocacy requirements, not just in the doctor's office or in a rehab center, but during those Medicaid assessments, continual advocacy is required. Who's that on in this scenario? It's on the family. In addition, the fact that that's on the family adds to the stress, adds to the workload. They have enough on their plate. You guys have enough on your plate. So what's ideal in the way we figured out how to do it is it's not just traditional elder law. It's elder care law. That's why we call what we do elder care law, because we incorporate the care into what we do, okay? You're going to have the legal side of it. You're going to have the financial component, and you're going to have the care component. All of that comes together in what we call a life care plan. So when your spouse needs care, our answer is the life care plan. We will address the legal, the financial, and the care. And Lord willing, we're doing it in advance, but if it's a crisis, we can help with that as well, okay? I'd be happy to answer any questions. And, before I do that, hold on. I forgot the last slide. The clients that we've helped throughout the years, and I've heard this firsthand throughout the years, and it's in our reviews that you can find online. There are certain results that families feel and families experience as they're going down that continuum with our assistance. On the legal front, they are protecting the assets. We're avoiding probate and guardianship because we've got the right powers of attorney, the right proxies. We have backup decision makers. We have a plan B, right? We have a plan set up on the legal front. On the financial side, the care is being paid for, and therefore we're saving assets. On the care side, there's going to be a peace of mind. There is stability, there's support, you have answers to different questions. We have been dealing with the long-term care system for decades. We know what's around the corner. There's a team of people willing and ready to help if there are any issues that are thrown your way. Tremendous focus on dignity and quality of life, not only for the client, but for the spouse as well. You know, if you've seen our logo, if you've been to our office, you've seen the heart and the shield, you've seen the honor and protect built into what we do. That's our driver. That's our motivator as to how we help our clients is dignity and quality of life. We're also going to be able to help clients manage change and deal with issues as they arise. What's around the corner? Where do you go to get answers? We can help with all that, okay? And there will be transitions. And if you're prepared for them, they should be taken, can be taken a little bit easier, okay? So now I'm done. Thank you again for joining me. If you have questions, I'll check the Q&A and I'll check the chat to see if there's any questions, but you could always reach out to me directly, brian@tullyelderlaw.com, or if it's time to sit down, please give us a call. 631-424-2800 is the office number. Again, thank you. Let me check the questions. No, we got one. If you have community Medicaid and the person gets worse, can it be turned to chronic care Medicaid? Meaning if, and Shari, thank you for the question, that happens a lot. Not every time, but it does happen. So if the plan is community-based care, you know, we've got eligibility issues, protection issues, income issues, the application process, the advocacy requirements, we get community Medicaid in place. There can be a deterioration and a decline, and sometimes a nursing home does become necessary. It is not an automatic transition. Because they're different application processes for different programs, it is a 5-year look back, and it will always be different than the community Medicaid. So it's a new application, it's a different process. When we're involved and we're helping, we just kind of change gears and go. Because it's a different process though, there's typically different fees involved. But care is, aging is dynamic. You need to be able to go with the flow, and changes do occur. So it can happen, but we just have to make it happen. All right. Another question. Medicaid allows a certain amount of assets. Can Medicaid lay claim to those remaining assets or those assets transfer to your heirs? Okay, good question. So a little while ago, I used the phrase estate recovery. In New York, if somebody is on Medicaid and they own assets in their name alone, solely, then when that Medicaid recipient passes on, an estate proceeding has to be brought, probate or administration. And in that case, Medicaid's going after it. In New York State, it's called estate recovery, meaning they can only go after your estate, that which is going through the courts. You avoid estate recovery by avoiding probate. So the $15,900 that the applicant is allowed to have, that needs to be in a joint account with a spouse or a sibling or a child, so that when the Medicaid applicant does eventually pass, that account automatically goes to the joint owner. And when that happens, you're not going to court. There's no estate to be probated. Therefore, New York can't touch a penny. Okay, so it will be sheltered and protected with joint owners or beneficiaries or trusts. Okay. Do we work in New York with Florida only if incident? Okay, so the question is, do we work in New York? If the parent's in Florida, then you need, and if it's planning for the parent, then you need an attorney admitted in Florida. We do have people central, southwest, southeast, northeast, so we can get you somebody, but wherever the client is, that's the state's laws that work. Next question is, if the person, if your loved one has those incidental, only has needs with the incidental activities of daily living, can you still apply for Medicaid? The answer is no. If that is a strict interpretation of what's happening and there are only incidental activities such as can't drive and can't prepare food and can't pay bills, then no, you should not be applying for community Medicaid benefit just to get in before the deadline and before the law changes. However, I can say this, and children agree with me. When we, as spouse or children, look at our loved one with care needs, we don't always see or appreciate all of the decline or all of the concerns or all of the needs. So there may actually be greater need that you're not perhaps seeing because, you know, it's the forest for the trees thing. Maybe you're just not seeing it because you're so close to your loved one. It's always good to look, to run down the list of activities of daily living. Using a cane, using a walker, the furniture surfing, as I mentioned it, that's needs with assistance with activities of daily living. That's walking. Typically that can then lead to bathing issues, because if there's walking issues, can they actually stand and shower? How are they handling that? So they do go hand in hand, and perhaps an outside objective perspective may help. You're welcome. Now, if you have, great point, if it's a second marriage and you have children from other sides, right? So if the wife comes in with children of her own, or the husband does, or the other one doesn't, but the children are just of the other side, having a plan, protecting in advance, which I've said several times, is the key. Communication is key. There are certain strategies that we use, such as that spousal refusal I mentioned between spouses. So, for example, if the husband needs care, he has 2 kids, and the wife doesn't need care and she has 2 kids, let's say it's a nursing home need, we're not able to give dad's assets to the kids because that's going to cause a penalty, and that means Medicaid won't pay. So we're looking at assets then going to the spouse and a spousal refusal to ensure Medicaid eligibility for dad, because there's never a penalty or waiting period between spouses when it comes to protection. But now, from the husband's kids' perspective, the second wife has the assets, and they're going to, and they think it's all going to go to her children. So those types of issues need to be spoken about. They need to be communicated. They need to be addressed. Okay. So yes, it's a valid concern, but with proper planning and documentation, it can all work out fine. Okay. Oh, another one. More questions. In the interim is in place, my father wants to hire an elder care attorney help with drafting a contract. So from what I understand, Kara, there, what you're asking is, if dad's going to hire a caregiver, can an attorney help with drafting the contract and the taxes? What most people do is, at the beginning of the continuum, is they're just paying cash or writing checks to cash. The best advice I can give is you want to document everything you're paying to an informal caregiver, meaning it's not an agency that's billing. So if you have to do cash, then get a receipt signed by the aide. You don't need social security numbers. You don't need all that. If you're not going to do it properly. If you're writing a check, get the aide's name on there. You want them to sign something so that if we need the Medicaid, or when we need the Medicaid, we can demonstrate and say, look at all these checks, or look at this receipt book. Look at all these signatures. This is where the money went. It wasn't gifts. We weren't trying to protect the money. We were spending it on the care. So you want to document it. An accountant is the best one to handle payroll issues. There's always risks with hiring aides that are not from an agency. They may not be insured. They may not be licensed. They may not be trained. I have had clients hire somebody off the books. That aide slips and falls, breaks something, they're suing. There's no insurance from an employer to cover, okay? And then you're gonna have a homeowner's insurance claim. That homeowner's insurance may try to fight the claim because you are paying somebody off the books that wasn't supposed to be there. So paying somebody cash off the books can result in problems. Usually it doesn't, but it can, okay? An actual agency where you don't gotta worry about taxes, you don't gotta worry about liability, you don't gotta worry about Medicaid questioning where the money goes, is technically the better route. However, it's more expensive, all right? And I certainly acknowledge that This informal care route is what many people do. Okay. Now, is the home subject to estate recovery if it's in the owner's name only? The answer is yes. Any asset in the Medicaid recipient's name alone when they pass away is subject to estate recovery. Okay, so you want to be careful with that. You avoid estate recovery by avoiding the estate altogether, and you do that by jointly owned accounts, by beneficiaries on accounts, or by utilizing a trust. All right, so if you put the home into an irrevocable trust years ago, or now if you're going for community Medicaid, then Medicaid can't touch it later after the parent passes. Okay. Again, thank you. We're done with our questions. Yes, we are. Thank you very much. Please keep an eye out, an ear out for next week's webinar information. We're actually going to be interviewing an assisted living specialist. All right. And she's one that is very familiar. She works with the Bristol chain. Julie Wexler is her name. And she'll be sharing the benefits of assisted living. So if you have questions about assisted living, I'll be interviewing her next Wednesday and you can ask her questions. All right. Thank you again for joining us, and we will see you soon.